Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention.
HBCU Sports, where institutions large and small, from the NEI to the NCAA, the insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic assistance to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bridget. We're coming from our home studios and sending a signal live KCH 1230 studio with the Texas Radio Hall of Fame, multi-Hall of Fame, Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, Charles, how you doing today?
Doing well, Doc. Had a good pleasure of presenting again this morning to the students of the Bowie State. I want to say shout out to them in terms of bringing research prime this morning. So had an opportunity to talk to their class, very good, enlightening conversation. So I enjoyed doing that. And shout out to my own class as well. She'll be tuning in about 3, 2, 1 today. So.
Nice job. With that being said, let me shout out all those students out from Bowie State, Texas University. You for talking to them earlier, the ones that are joining us tonight. It's great to have you. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and education consulting and data analytics. Let me not take this opportunity to shout out Mel, power to the women, and she's on the backdrop doing the production, getting us right and heavy. I had a chance to take a trip to Las Vegas. That's always a good thing in a lot of ways, to go to Las Vegas. But this was for NAB, broadcast engineering industry side of things. You know, while obviously I'm getting used to being in front of the camera from a hosting perspective, I've done the research as you would, sport management perspective, sports studies perspective, and joint with sports communication. But it was a new world for me to get into this broadcast engineering with the group that I'm working with and doing some consulting with, AZA Communications, as they get it done at AZA Company, I should say, as they do production. And you have brothers that are on engineers that have went into the production side of this, and they have done everything that you can think of, from those that you're probably more familiar with on the branding side, in terms of CNN, politics, both Republican and Democrat convention, ESPN, sports, TNT. They've done all that work behind the camera, the wiring, production, engineering, everything that you need to do, the trucks. They're all familiar with that. And so, boy, you talking about head spinning and getting inside to it. So I want to shot this out in terms of what that looks like. You think you know something until you don't.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Yeah.
I want to take a little privilege and give a shout out to Mel for doing us a solid, and then just to those gentlemen, Stephen, to name some of them, in terms of Bill, Z, out there getting it done in so many different ways in terms of what that looks like. So shout out to all of the gentlemen involved. Chris, as he does a lot of the consulting paperwork on the backside, in terms of what goes on for all those involved, as well as Kenny, one of our frat brothers. So I got a chance to kick it with him a little bit too. So it was a good, strong weekend. With that being said, let's get back into the sporting side of things. What's on your mind? I know we kicked off things in terms of a huge weekend in spring football. It looked like everybody decided to have a party on the same day.
Yeah.
It seems like everything went well. People excited, had fun, which is always a good thing to happen. And progress was made. We'll see just how much as we certainly get into the fall when things get real. But lining up before that in terms of fall practice, summer practice, whatever you want to call it, when it gets live again. What are your thoughts in general, Charles?
Yeah, hope springs eternal, of course, in spring football. So a lot of festivities and activities this past weekend. I think Jackson State had their spring game. Texas Southern had their spring game. Mississippi Valley had their spring game. Gramblin's is this upcoming weekend. So you get an opportunity to roll out some names that you had not seen, or you get to know or get to learn some new faces, if you will, that should be in the mix this upcoming fall. And then, it's the post-spring analysis thing that sort of happens, because not only do you have guys that play, but some guys sort of make that decision after the spring game whether this program is for them or not. So you have a little churning, if you will, that happens after the spring game. So it's very interesting to sit back and watch.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Back to the ping of the bat, if you would. Baseball is the time of year. Softball, some track as well. On the baseball side of things, guess who is getting some top 25 votes?
Yeah.
You hear about that? Bethune-Cookman received
playing some good ball.
Top 25 votes. First time since 2017. Kudos to Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. Everybody wanted to bury them last year in baseball, but it looks like they're live and well as they're in the heat of a race and playing some very good baseball and getting some recognition. In terms of those that think just how strong they may be as they actually get votes in the top 25. So that's significant. Remember, in 2017, when they ended the season, they ranked all the way up to basically 30. Obviously, the top 25, but if you count it down with it, they were at 30. So significant to see that they're getting votes. Be interesting to see how the end of the season and second half of the baseball race goes, because it'll be interesting with that. But what else is on your mind in terms of some big news out there? I know in the middle of the SWAC men's and women's golf, and somebody that is a golfer like yourself, I'm sure you're sneaking in there watching things. What do you got for us?
Oh, very much so. But before I get to golf, I wanted to mention big mega camp that's going to be happening at Prairie View in terms of big mega camp in terms of Coach Prime coming back to the SWAC. They'll have a big camp June 1st, I believe, at Prairie View, where a lot of different schools will be represented. So that made big news today while we were still talking about spring football. So now, attention turns towards the camps that will be happening towards summer and things of that nature. So definitely want to put that out there with regards to that big mega camp happening at Prairie View.
Yeah, that should be fascinating. I see with Grambling State, Alcorn State will be involved along with some other historically white colleges, including Georgia Tech at the Power 5 level, if you would, in terms of ACC. Fascinating. I think it was some 20-some schools, at least 15.
Yeah,
a lot of schools involved in that. So it should be a lot of students there. Anytime I think you get a chance to see the facilities, Prairie View for young men that oftentimes wouldn't recognize what Prairie View has been able to do specifically in terms of facility growth, where it was just 10 years ago, I think is a significant opportunity. So it'd be fascinating to see how do you make that move. Sure, Coach Bubba McDowell is excited with this opportunity, continue to push this forward. So I'll be watching with the one eye to kind of see what this means as things move down after people forget about it. What may come out of it as those individuals, particularly in this day and age with the transfer portal. As you just talked about at the end of this camp, a lot of folks going to start making moves. I think you even heard a couple of them as early as today. Player transferring out of Southern in terms of that. And you'll start seeing these popping up. A couple out of running back out of Jackson State.
Sivion Wilkerson,
Wilkerson, in terms of what that was. So it'll be fascinating to see what this looks like, where these guys go, where they stay in the HBCU realm or where they take their opportunity elsewhere. So fascinating to see what this means, particularly when we get into the race. Obviously, July we'll get a chance to get a little more depth and talk about it and get everybody lather if it needs to be done, but we'll do that in terms of what that looks like. So great breakdown. Go ahead. Let me talk back to you. Make sure you get me golf, but you never let me let it down.
And let's talk a little bit about it. SWAC Golf Championships are taking place in Jackson, Mississippi at the Refuge Golf Course. And I will say, Doc, that course has humbled me in many a day, but they're having a SWAC Championship golf tournament there over there in Jackson. And day one recap, Texas Southern Lady Tigers. They finished day one of the 2023 SWAC Women's Golf Championship in first place. They've updated the scores today. I think Prairie View is up Texas Southern is on top of Prairie View by 24 strokes right now. So they've widened that lead from the first day. I believe the first day they were up 11 strokes, but now they've widened that lead out. Second day, that normally happens as golfers get a little more acclimated to the course and things of that nature, get used to the green speed. So Texas Southern is leading on the women's side. And on the men's side, Arkansas Pine Bluff, they are playing lights out golf. They are -4 as of yesterday. So we'll wait and see where they come in today, as I'm sure they're still out there on the course, and we'll see whether they are able to increase their lead today. They're on top of Florida A&M by some 13 strokes after day one. So.
How significant is that type of lead at the college level, and what you've seen over the years in the SWAC for folks that may not be in depth with golf, or for those that are, but they're either used to watching professionals or what they're doing on at the college level, specific for the SWAC? How significant is an 11-stroke or 18-stroke lead after day two and day one in terms of what we may see today coming in for the men's side versus the women?
From what I've seen, it's like that day one, and if you really take control of the golf championship, if you will, on day one, it becomes a boat race, and then you can kind of ride your best golfers. They're going back out there on day two, and they've gotten a little more acclimated to the course. They've gotten a little more acclimated to the green speeds, and they normally do better day two, day three. So sometimes you see that lead widen in day two, day three. But I've seen it where you've had teams, they click in some type way on day two, and they start eating into that lead. I think there was one year in particular, Jackson State women's golf, when Jackson State had a women's golf program, that they ate into a lead and they were able to catch the team on day three. So you never know. These things I've seen lately where it becomes a boat race after day one, but you've seen it happen in years prior, where a team gets hot in day two, and they get that rah-rah speech and they're ready to go out there and do business on day two and day three.
Good stuff when you break it down like that. So you don't see a lot of comebacks golf, at least in the SWAC, once a team gets out there, especially if it's a significant type lead, multiple strokes. You don't tend to see a team saying, all right, one kind of falling back and the team able to
It's tough, especially that golf course. Refuge is a golf course that has a lot of water and a lot of very interesting places on the green where if you hit the green, it'll roll off. So, and I'm sure the green speeds have been adjusted for tournament play. So that's going to be very interesting to see. But particularly when you talk about teams trying to get into some shot making, it could be some issues that might happen from there, and they could very easily fall back to the wayside in terms of trying to catch a team.
Good stuff. Let me give you this update here, and then we'll see what else you want to bring in as we might need to change the subject as we get into it. MEAC announces new hiring staff. I thought this was kind of fascinating as they continue to move forward. Nita Easton, Sonia Steele announced on Tuesday the introduction of 2 new staff members and the elevation of 2 others as the 2023 academic year progresses and conferences move forward. Dr. Zanetta Ivy Bailey has been hired as the Associate Commissioner for Administration and Compliance, while Deborah Davis, who was no stranger, I should say, to the MEAC, has been brought in board full-time as the Senior Director of Accounting. Got to make sure the money right. In addition, Nakia has been elevated from Administrative Assistant to Director of Administrative Service and Logistics, while Ohian Gaston, previously Special Assistant to the Commissioner, is now the Director of Administrative Services in Esports Coordinator. As they doubled down on esports and what I saw them do, I told you at the men's and women's MEAC basketball tournament, they were all in. It seemed like it was significant. This seems like more support in regards to figuring out how they're going to make that work. Bailey comes to the MEAC with over 20 years of experience coordinating student athletes, academic support offices, compliance departments, and managing full-time academic coordinator, interns, and graduating assistants. She was previously the director of compliance at the University of Memphis, and before that, she was assistant athletic director of academics at Howard University. Davis, who had previously served as the business manager for conference office, will oversee the MEAC's overall accounting and auditing operations and practices. Hill and Gaston will be responsible for the day-to-day operations of the MEAC office, while Gaston will now serve as the conference office's main contact for esports. Interesting to see what that looks like. Any thoughts on that in terms of the hires, particularly that esports seems a little fascinating to me?
Oh, no doubt, esports is fascinating, but I think for me, you get a little bit more of an understanding of the day-to-day operations of these conferences, especially with regards to the positions. And there's so much that goes on to the day-to-day operations and putting on championships for these student athletes. But it's good to see the various positions be highlighted in terms of who's getting what within the conference offices, things of that nature. So I like to see who is sort of the engine behind the car, if you will. So it's good to have those people recognized.
Cool, good stuff. With that being said, any additional updates you want to get before we transition a little bit of softball? I want to give you some updates on softball and get your thoughts on that. We'll really get into baseball, but I want to make sure we give some love to the women as they are playing some fascinating softball, if you would, on the dirt, getting it done. What else you wanted to bring to the table, news of the day?
Yeah, let's take a look at the SWAC softball weekly honors. The SWAC has tabbed Texas Southern's Madison Griggs and Prairie View's Jericho Rojas for their SWAC softball weekly honors for their outstanding performances this past week. Let's take a look at the hitter of the week, which was Madison Griggs. She produced 7 RBIs during 4 games this past week against Alcorn and Southern. She also tallied 7 hits in addition to scoring 3 runs during those contests while contributing a batting average of a gaudy .500, Dr. Cavil. And the pitcher of the week is Jericho Rojas. She went the distance during a 3-0 Prairie View shutout victory over Grambling this past weekend. She allowed only 1 hit while walking 2 and striking out 7 batters. So those were your hitter and pitcher of the week on SWAC softball.
Perfect time. And with that, let's take our first break, as we'll come back on the other side. And I tease you a little bit about softball. We will promise to give you some softball. Make sure y'all don't get mad at us. And then we'll take a deeper dive into the baseball across the landscape, space, non-conference, and then we'll get in really hot and heavy on the SWAC side. Stick with us after this first break.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
Bounty versus the old family dish towel. Drying with a fresh sheet of Bounty leaves your hands cleaner than a used dish towel that can carry and redistribute food residue. So ditch the dish towel for better hand hygiene. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food? Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant. Authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door. Tell your mama hungry.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Charles, I want to give you a little bit of the baseball update. I know you have your concerns of what's going on in the NEC, but it wouldn't be right if we didn't at least give a quick update. We get a chance to give you a deeper dive. So just listen to the the updates, I should say, which will have the scores. And you're right, it continues not to be quite as good as things could be when we talk about the former MEAC teams, HBCU programs in the NEC. First off, we had Norfolk State. They lost a game, if you would, on Friday in terms of to Longwood as they continue to struggle this season. It's just been one of those things. It's been tough in a lot of ways of what that looks like. But more to that, you had a chance for Norfolk and Delaware State to get it done. And so obviously one of the HBC programs were going to get a win there. In this case, it was Delaware State shutting out Norfolk State 2-0 in that case. So that was a good thing for them. Maryland Eastern Shore, as they kind of bounced back and played some good baseball, they had a tough Friday session with Wagner where they lost 8-3. Coppin lost to Stonehill 11-6 in their opening games on Friday in terms of giving those updates of what they look like. And then you turn the chapter to Saturday to see if some teams can get back into it and what would happen in that matchup. Maryland Eastern Shore bounces back and gets a 6-3 win over Wagner, which is big. Coppin State bounces back. And check this out. They get their win over Stonehill 9-5 in terms of what looks like there. And then so Sunday, you have the final matchup of the three to see who would get it done. Can these teams get 2 out of 3? Start out with the Delaware State and Norfolk State as they actually play 2 on Sunday. Delaware State wins the first one over Norfolk State 11-6. And then they actually bring out the brooms as they win a close one over Norfolk 8-7 in terms of what that looks like. Maryland Eastern Shore takes 2 out of 3 from Wagner as they win the final game 7-1. And Coppin State cannot get it done as Stonehill does take 2 out of 3 from Coppin State as they fall 4-1 in that matchup to give you what is taking place there. So fascinating to see what continues to go on in the Northeast Conference. Maryland Shore has now jumped up to the 6th spot at 9-9 in the conference. Behind them is Coppin State at 5-10. So Maryland Eastern Shore continues to be the class as they win 2 straight games. More importantly, taking 2 out of 3 in terms of their matchup there, in terms of what that looks like. In regards to the Colonial with A&T, as they get back into action, give you a chance to give you an update of what took place in the Colonial, specifically looking for what A&T was able to do in terms of those matchups as they sit overall in the Colonial, losing, as I should say, 3 straight games in that matchup. So they fall to 6-10. So it was a tough weekend for A&T in terms of what they were able to do in the conference race. And they continued to struggle. They were kind of sitting a little bit in the middle of the road, but it's getting a little long in the tooth. They played Delaware. They lost the first game 8-7. Close one there. They follow up on Saturday and lost another heartbreaker there as it was close 4-3. And then they get pounded, if you would, 11-4 in terms of their last loss there in terms of that matchup. Any thoughts just in terms of the independent program, what that looks like?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who gets votes, at least, in the Black College Nines top 10 in terms of large programs this upcoming week. And we'll put in our ballots. Today was the deadline for that, but just to see where if there's any forward momentum for teams like a Delaware State or a Coppin State or even a Maryland Eastern Shore. Maryland Eastern Shore, a great weekend, taking 2 of 3 from their opponent. But, when you take a look at the top 10 teams in the Black College Nines, top 10 ranking, it's littered with SWAC teams now. So it's interesting to see what those teams over there on the Eastern Seaboard, if they can get some votes and maneuver themselves into the top 10.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. It looks tough for A&T. Can they kind of bounce back and give some more momentum? But Maryland Eastern Shore is playing some pretty good baseball. It looks like they're going to be able to get in. It'll be interesting to see if they can, get a little bit of that magic in the tournament as things kind of shake out. But with that being said, let's get into the SWAC. We'll start in terms of what's going on in terms of those Friday matchups, give you some updates on what that looks like. FAMU defeats Alabama A&M 6-3. Bethune-Cookman, we talked about getting those votes. They pound Mississippi Valley 13-2. And then you have Alabama State, Jackson State turned in one of those games where it just got ugly. It looked like a football score, 24-7.
3 touchdowns and a field goal. Oh.
Not much to say on that one. But with that being said, on the west side, you had another surprise to some people was not necessarily that Texas Southern won, but the fact that they basically 10-run ruled Southern as it was 11-1 in that matchup. Grambling does what they're supposed to do in a lot of ways against Alcorn, or maybe even more so. They put up one of those football scores too, 17, as they shut out the Braves 17-0. Prairie View gets 2 touchdowns of themselves, as this is the refrain on this Friday, as they defeat Arkansas Pine Bluff 14-1 in terms of what looks like there. Let's get into Saturday, give you these updates while we're here on these scores, and then we'll come in and get you a little bit about to break these down in the next segment. But let's just give folks an update as we get into it so they understand what direction you're going when you break this down. On Saturday, Bethune-Cookman pounds Mississippi Valley 19-7. FAMU pounds Alabama A&M 16-7. So you see some of these crooked letter scores as teams are really struggling a bit, if you would. As you talked about earlier about the pitching, Prairie View pounds Pine Bluff 13-2. And then Grambling gets a 10-4 victory over the Braves in terms of what is taking place. With the top teams playing the bottom teams, you didn't have many of the lineups other than Texas Southern and Southern, as you said, match into that. So that was fascinating when you say what goes on there. With that being said, the tough news of the day is the Texas Southern games. They pushed those to Sunday to see if they could get them in. They were canceled and rained out. So Southern has had a couple of games canceled this year. That's 3 overall that they're in the hole, 1 against Prairie View. Remember, they were able to make up 2 of those games on Tuesday last week as we got into the show. But these 2 games against Texas Southern were canceled. So that's 3 games that there's a difference. So it'll be interesting how they played out.
So no Tuesday makeup?
And then I know you got a question. We'll answer that.
Okay.
Prairie View was defeated Pine Bluff 12-4, so brought out the room, a sweep there. Alabama State gets the sweep, but it's a close one in this matchup. They just get past Jackson State 6-5. Grambling Alcorn was postponed, so you didn't get to finish that one. So a hole in there. FAMU gets the sweep out of Alabama A&M, winning 18-7 in that matchup. But Bethune-Cookman sweeps Valley, but it is a close one in that Sunday matchup. It goes to 11 innings, so they need the extra innings to get that done as they defeat Valley 6-3. Alabama State does get by Jackson to sweep them in terms of the doubleheader that day, 6-1 in terms of those matchups. What were you going to say there, Charles?
So I was curious. There's no Tuesday makeup between Southern and Texas Southern.
No, that is something that the coaches often will get together and decide. And I think that was something that Prairie View and Southern decided to do. Probably a lot more onus on Prairie View wanting to get that game in there. But oftentimes they have that week I used to have the week at the end of the year where a lot of teams would try to find a way to get it done. But now with the expansion of the league, there's really not a lot of room for makeups unless they do it during the week. And that happens to be something that both coaches have to agree upon. As you know, finances is a decision maker. Do you bring your team back out there? And so that's another part of it. How much is the team want to go back on the road to play a game? So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. I've seen what a lot of teams will do is they will at least play maybe one of the games if the second half or wherever they're going. But the problem you get now, these rainouts this weekend are part of the second half. So they were the return trip. And so essentially for Southern and Texas Southern, they end their record 2-2. Because remember earlier, Southern got 2 out of 3 from Texas Southern here in Houston with 2 big comebacks, if you would, late in 2 of those games to get 2 out of 3 at the time. And so I don't know what that would look like, but I've seen in some cases ahead of time where a team may have canceled a game in the first part, that they will go ahead and at least play one additional game on the road. So they'll be able to, have 4 games. We've seen that kind of stuff happens with doubleheaders, but not much more than that. It'll be interesting because this is kind of new. Last year, everything was able to pretty much get done. And so it'll be fascinating to see what that looks like. So great question.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. When you start taking a look at, especially this past weekend's games, even with the rainouts, the wheat is separated from the chaff, if you will. You take a look at the SWAC East, Bethune-Cookman, Alabama State, and Florida A&M. They've really taken a foothold of race over there in the SWAC East. Those are the 3 teams to watch. But things, I think, are still just completely playing out over there in the SWAC West. So it's very interesting taking a look at the teams over there in the SWAC West. Grambling on top of the SWAC West right now. And Prairie View's right there on the heels there, a game back. Texas Southern is 2 games back in the loss column when you take a look at where they are in the standings in Southern, still lurking around. So they still have some work to do. Big weekend this upcoming weekend against Grambling. But I know, Dr. Bill, my focus this weekend, Bethune-Cookman heading to Montgomery. That's going to be a matchup of heavyweights when you take a look at this weekend.
Good stuff, good stuff. And we'll get a chance to maybe get a little more in terms of some of the big matchups. On the other side, we'll come back and talk about what Charles thinks about those scores that we've seen, and we'll break down a little more about the race that you're hinting to. Stick with us. We'll be right back after our second break. We'll come back on the other side, give a little more D1 talk in terms of SWAC. Let's get into it. Stick with us. Be right back after this second break.
Nope.
Come on, him.
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never, ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Stillman College is an HBCU in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where we prepare students for a different world. Stillman is a college of distinction for last year and this year. Our largest majors are business and biology, followed closely by psychology, criminal justice, and history for pre-law, communications, English, and religion. Our newest degree programs are in the Department of Computational Sciences, which covers cybersecurity, data analytics, and math. The Biomedical Academy prepares students for competitive entry into health professions and graduate programs. We have established summer biomedical research internships with major research institutions, such as the University of Alabama, Drexel and Temple Universities in Philadelphia, the Salk Institute in San Diego, California, and the Universities of Florida, Indiana, and Iowa. We became creative with social distancing and masks for the pandemic. Our students enjoy movie nights at the stadium and the new Melissa and Davis Legacy Courtyard, where you can eat and enjoy friends. We have the Divine Nine Greek letter organizations, student government leadership, and ambassadors. Our small class sizes, nurturing faculty, and friendly environment let you know that Black Lives Matter at Stillman College each and every day. Applications are free. Sign up at discover.stillman.edu. Complete the contact card and apply today. Stillman College, where we prepare students for a different world.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Back for this third segment. Let's get into the Western Division race here. Let me break this down as you kind of tease this out, but let me get a little more depth. Let's start in the Western Division. Sitting in the fourth spot. Well, let me just give you all six. It's not a lot. Auburn State is sitting at 2-14 at the bottom. Right above them is Arkansas Pine Bluff at 3-12. Southern is sitting at 7-5. Texas Southern above them at 8-5, a half a game if you would. Prairie View is sitting in the second spot at 10-4, but that's only a game above in terms of the loss column. But they played 2 more games than Texas Southern and 3 more games than Southern. Grambling is in first at 12-3, 15 games there. So Prairie View is actually a game and a half back, even though they're just 1 game behind them in the loss column. Grambling has played 2 more games than Prairie View. So we're going to really get into this percentage race and not just overall record in conference. So Grambling's at 80%, Prairie View's at 71%, Texas Southern at 61%, Southern at 58%, just to give you an indication of percentage, and that's winning percentage of what that look like. So it'll be fascinating to see what goes on there. I think more interesting is Grambling's on a 4-game win streak, Prairie View on 3, and Texas Southern on 1. Going into the Eastern Division here is 11-2. Now, let me start at the bottom, as I always tell to tease it up. Alabama A&M, as hot as they started with the taking 2 out of 3 from Jackson, what we thought was good. Well, see, Jackson is struggling, so we understand that wasn't the case for A&M. They're at 2-11. Mississippi Valley is 4-14. Jackson State is ahead of them in terms of less losses, but tied with them on the win at 4-11. FAMU, as you get in the top 2-3 teams that are really battling out, are at 12-3. The Rattlers are, as so is Alabama State, also at 12-3. And just a game above them, if you would, is Bethune-Cookman at 11-2. So it's really a close race in terms of what that looks like, as Alabama State is a game behind. What that is, all those teams in terms of Alabama State family have played 15, but Bethune-Cookman has only played 13 in regards to those rainouts. So I know you wanted to talk a little bit about your concerns in regards to those first day scores that I rolled off in the second segment, go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, well, the thing that jumped out at me with the Friday scores were the football scores. You got Alabama State beating Jackson State 24-7, Texas Southern on top of Southern 11-1, Prairie View whoops Pine Bluff 14-1. I mean, Bethune-Cookman 13-2 over Valley. The only baseball score, if you will, is FAMU and Alabama A&M. So the question that jumped out for me was, were the Aces pitching Friday? Because you just don't normally see, football scores on a Friday. And I know Omar Melendez was pitching for Alabama State. I was following that a little closer. Kobe got pretty good pitcher for Jackson State in terms of one of their better pitchers, but he got roughed up Friday. And you talk about Southern, their pitcher got roughed up. Pine Bluff got roughed up. It just jumped out at me that these scores were so out of the norm, if you will, on a Friday.
I wonder if the weather is playing a part of this. All these rainouts. Is that really something that is throwing off the pitchers in terms of their normal rotation and how the coaches are trying to deal with it and mixing things up? Because you're right. Usually on a Friday is when you think you're going to see your closer games because you have the two aces and they tend to be top and there's not necessarily a lot of distance between the aces across the league. It's maybe your third game on Sunday if a team doesn't have the pitching depth where that can get out of hand. In this case, you actually had two closer games on Sundays the way it just played out. So something is going on here that's a little different in regards to some of these scores and games. So they're fascinating. I'll have to get on the phone and see if we can get some updates from coaches, what their thoughts, and bring it back to y'all and see if we can find out something and take a deeper dive. Get Mike to do a little bit of his data analysis, if he would, on it as well. So much is fascinating when you talk about what's going on in terms of these races. With that being said, in some ways,
let me ask this question, Doc. The top 8 teams are the teams that go to the SWAC baseball tournament, correct? So is it time to start getting into a little bit of scoreboard watching when you start taking a look at those bottom 3 teams or standings watching, if you will, those bottom 3 teams in both the SWAC East and SWAC West? You got Jackson State, Alabama A&M Valley below the Mendoza line, if you will, on the East. And then in the West, Southern, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Arkansas and Alcorn all below the Mendoza line. But what's going to be fascinating is Jackson State and Southern. Will they, put their foot on the gas at some point to try to make it and turn into the tournament over the next few weeks?
I like that because I think it's a little different. I think in the West, I think Southern is pretty safe. I think they're going to get in.
Yeah.
The question is going to be more about seeding. That's why it was tough not to see that Texas Southern matchup play. It'll give us a little more differential to see where Southern really is. But I think there's still some battle to be played. Southern can make a move at least to third, and maybe they can find a way to get hot. They still got Prairie View, so they can make a little room there in terms of stuff. As you said, they have Grambling this weekend. So if they're going to make a move, it's probably now. But I think they're safe to be in the tournament. At worst, 4 seed in the Western Division. I think it's a little more different and challenging, as you said, in Eastern. I think that's where it gets a little intriguing, that battle between Jackson State and Mississippi Valley. Both teams are at 4 wins. And so huge differential in terms of losses. Valley has 3 more losses, but can they get a good series, if you would? And if Jackson State continues to struggle, you can see that 4th spot really in a position. I think Alabama A&M, they're a little too far out to me to make it. I guess it's just 2 games, so maybe they can make a run out of it.
I'm starting to watch in terms of Jackson State at 4-11, and then you have Arkansas Pine Bluff at 3-12 in conference. Those are the 2 teams that I'm really paying attention to in terms of weekend series, this upcoming series. I pay a little bit more attention to Arkansas Pine Bluff and Texas Southern to see if Pine Bluff can at least take 2 or 3. And then you got the same sort of dynamic with Jackson State and Alabama A&M. Both of those teams need to have an impressive showing to at least win the series this weekend to sort of because I think they're the 2 that are going to be fighting it out for this 8th spot.
Yeah, I think in terms of the East is more intriguing in terms of matchups. I think between Bethune-Cookman, Alabama State, and FAMU, when they play Jackson State, Valley, and Alabama A&M, they must get the 2 out of 3. But they're looking at trying to get the sweep because that one loss can be the difference in terms of them finishing and winning their division or drop away to 3rd. And so you think about that 3rd is going to be a matchup with the number 2 team in the West. And that could be significant versus you find a way to stay at the top of the Eastern Division and you're playing the number 4 team in the West. And so I agree with you. It's going to be fascinating to see what these teams at the bottom. Now, in the West, I think it's a little more fluctuated. Obviously, Grambling, Prairie View will be an interesting race to see in terms of what that looks like. But if you talk about the loss column, Texas Southern and Southern are just 2 games behind.
They're 2 games behind,
Grambling.
exactly.
So,
yeah.
In terms of the loss, obviously, you're going to have to get into the percentages to see what that means in terms of number of games played if you can make it up in the win columns. But if you can get a series, take 2 out of 3, you're literally right back in the race. You're moving from 4 to possibly 2 in just a weekend series. If you can find a way to get a sweep, it's going to be fascinating. But I think it becomes even more important in the Western Division as you talk about. When you go and play Arkansas, Pine Bluff, or Alcorn State, you got to find a way to bring out the broom. Prairie View, to their credit, they played Pine Bluff. They've taken all 6 games. So that's 6 wins that they've been able to make sure they stack up. They've taken 3 for Alcorn. They played them again. They want to find a way to get those wins. You get, 6 wins between those 2. That's 12 wins. You can have some room for error against Grambling, Texas Southern if you're doing that, right? And so I'm fascinated to see what that looks like when these other teams, Grambling, Prairie View, and Southern play Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Alcorn. Can they do that? You already seen Grambling kind of slip up against Alcorn. Southern lost 1 to Alcorn, right? So it'll be fascinating to see how much that hurts them down the stretch, particularly now that we're playing a percentage game versus just overall record where you can look at a lot more of the head-to-head and get your bus there.
Let me ask this question. Who do you think is the more vulnerable division leader right now when you take a look at Bethune-Cookman or Grambling?
It has to be Bethune-Cookman. You just talked about them going to Montgomery this weekend. It's a game. Those teams play tough. It's hard to sweep FAMU, Alabama State, and Bethune-Cookman when they face each other. So you're talking about 2 and 3, and they're going on the road. I think the most vulnerable is Bethune-Cookman, even though they're playing probably the best baseball. But let's keep it a buck. Alabama State and FAMU are not playing bad baseball either.
I think FAMU has a great opportunity this weekend playing Valley to vault themselves right into first place.
Exactly. So it's not enough room there. And slightly behind that, Grambling, I think they're playing some really good baseball. So they don't have a lot of room for error. But we'll see this weekend. They have the old rivalry game. It's in Baton Rouge. As long as they can get the field ready, I'm sure they're exercising that because Southern does not want to lose any more games because they're be in trouble of not just making the percentages to get in the tournament in terms of those games lost there. So that is something to keep your mind on. So I'll be watching that pretty clearly this weekend. Let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side and talk about a little bit of those series, give you some softball updates, just at least to give you some breakdown to see what's going on. Obviously, everybody's eyes on Prairie View as they had the win streak. Can they keep it going? We'll give you those updates on the other side and just see how much of that momentum continues and give you a glimpse also in the Eastern Division to see who's taking control of that as well. Stick with us after our last break. We'll be back on the other side to close things out and give you some of the games to watch, give you some updates on softball, and let you know how the world turns. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this last break.
It's been difficult because I hadn't been able to see my grandchildren.
An expression on someone's face when you do something nice for them.
I miss all my friends in school.
Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision about COVID-19 vaccine.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
Let's get back to getting ticks instead of watching flicks. Before we can safely get out there, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your crew.
For 5-star backyards, Yellowwood brand pressure-treated pine. If it doesn't have this yellow tag, you don't want it.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, yeah, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill, inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment, as you know. With that being said, before we get in this last segment, I'd be remiss if I didn't give us those listeners. That is Edwin D. Morris, Silas Edward McMorris, Emma Price, G. Allen, Chuck Hunt, Ricky Burton, all in the house as always. Karen Griffin, getting it done. Willie Alex Hines in the building. Jimmy L. Wilson, I see you, Wilson, getting in here. And Miss Wendy Jenkins Bishop, thanks for following the show live and checking us out. With that being said, let's start out over there with North Carolina A&T on the softball side. Oh, man, they take the show on the road, and Thompson brings out the brooms. They lose the first one 1-5, second one 9-2, I should say, and the first one was 5-1. 9-2, and they lose a close one on the third one, 3-2, as they couldn't quite get a game in matchup, which means they fall to 5-2 overall, sitting at 12-29, and that is 5-10, I should say, in the conference race. Obviously losing 3 straight with the sweep. They sit in the 8th spot of the 11-team race in terms of what looks like they're in the Colonial. In the OVC, Tennessee State is faring a little better in their conference race as they are 6-8. They've lost 2 straight as it goes down for them as they sit in the 5th position in the conference race. They win the first game against Southern Illinois, Evansville, as they win a close one, tough one, 2-1. Then they lose the second game, 8-6, and the final one, 4-3. So tough going there as they could not get it done, which puts them in the 5th spot in the 9-team race, if you would, in softball for the Ohio Valley in terms of what that looks like. Let's get into the MEAC race. Morgan State continues to hold it down. They sit at 10-1, 20-13 overall. They won their last 3 games, so they sweep their opponent this week, which was big for them. North Carolina Central, as they take 2 out of 3. They're a game behind at 11-2, so they have righted the ship, if you would, in terms of getting it going. It starts to move apart a little bit after that. Norfolk State is 9-5. And just to give you the top 4 teams, you have Maryland Eastern Shore at 6-4 in terms of some of the races there. As we look at softball for the MEAC, should be fascinating to let you know how things are going there. In terms of Prairie View update, they've lost their first game in the SWAC, and it took the 3rd game of the series as they fall to 17-1 in terms of that matchup, as they couldn't quite get it done, and they really get pushed to the brink. Grambling is the team that gives Prairie View the first loss of the season. They win the first one as they do, dominated on Friday, 12-3. Then you have the double series. They win the second one, so they do take 2 out of 3 of the series, 3-0. They lose the last one, 9-1, as Grambling really pushes it around. Credit to Grambling for sticking into it. Which means Grambling, if any team was going to beat Prairie View, it probably would be Grambling. They sit in the 2nd spot, but they are 5 games behind in terms of the loss column as they sit at 11-6. But kudos to Grambling as they get it done. Texas Southern is sitting in the 3rd spot at 9-9. all the other teams, starting with Southern in the 4th spot in terms of the top 4 teams going. Southern is 7-10, but it should be fascinating in terms of another one to figure out who's their 4th slot, because Alcorn State is a 6-11 right behind Southern to see if they can find a way to sneak in their 4th spot. So we'll keep eyes on that. You talk about the East. At the very top, it's another close race between Alabama State and FAMU. Alabama State currently holds the top spot as they are 12-6. FAMU, the Rattlers, are 10-5. So a game back, but they played 2 less games on the win side there. And then you have Bethune-Cookman right there as well at 12-7. So they are a game behind, if you would, even though they played one more game, they have one more loss in terms of Alabama State. And then you have Alabama A&M at 9-6. Behind them is Jackson State at 8-7. So again, you have another race for that 4th spot between Alabama A&M and Jackson State in terms of what that looks like in the South. Anything that you have to say about softball? I broke it all down, at least in terms of records. A couple of weekend series I told you about. Any general thoughts you have on softball across the board?
Across the board, shout out to these programs in terms of getting it done both on the baseball diamond and the softball diamond. But Alabama State, Florida A&M, and Bethune-Cookman all playing great baseball and softball. And same thing, Prairie View, Grambling, Texas Southern all playing great baseball and softball. Shout out to Grambling. It's tough to break that glass ceiling to get that first loss pin on Prairie View. So kudos to them to getting that win. And big weekend this upcoming weekend in terms of Bethune-Cookman and Alabama State on the baseball side of things, Doc. Looking forward to that series. We'll see how much of a beneficiary the FAMU Rattlers can be from what's going on in Montgomery this weekend.
Good stuff, good stuff. Let's jump right into it then. Friday begins this latest series as we get into week 7, the second weekend of the second half of the season, if you would. So fascinating to see what this starts with. First up, let's go to the East Division. You have Mississippi Valley State on the road at FAMU and Tallahassee. As you see where Tallahassee in terms of FAMU Rattlers, where they are in the race. So they need to find a way to get out the rooms. Can they get it done at home? You would think there's a shot there. Jackson State and Alabama A&M. Alabama A&M is going to make the move to see if they can inch for that 4th spot. This is the time to get it done. Jackson State, this is a series they really need to find a way.
Badly.
It's more than just 2 out of 3. They got to find a way to really sweep, which solidifies them more than not to be in the 4th spot. If not, it's going to continue to linger along and battle down the stretch to make sure they get that 4th spot. And
I tell you, that first weekend series where Alabama A&M took 2 of 3 from Jackson State and Jackson, it really set the tone, if you will, for Jackson State in terms of playing SWAC baseball this past season. It's been a really rough go. They really need this series badly at Alabama A&M.
Ooh, good one. And so you got to believe Alabama A&M, even though they haven't fared well as late. You think they're going to come in a little bit of confidence. What they were able to do, like you said, their first series. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So things certainly can change. The last game on the Eastern Division is the one to keep your eyes on. As you see, I kind of did it purposely, saved it for last. In this case, it certainly is the best for the last. Bethune-Cookman and Alabama State. The Wildcats go on the road to Montgomery. This is going to be a fascinating. This matchup has been good for the years. Going to be a lot of chattering in those dugouts as these teams like to kind of throw back to old SWAC, I would say, particularly if you wanted. I know you were fascinated when you seeing the World Baseball Classic with the teams out of the Caribbean. It reminds you of the Negro League days. This is the case where you might get a little bit of that mixed up in here as well. Similar when you see Jackson State and Grambling play each other, even though that would be a non-divisional game when they play in Whitten County Conference standings. So this is a little different because it means more. First place is on the line. What are your thoughts in terms of this matchup, Charles?
The number 1 and number 2 pitching teams in the SWAC. Alabama State comes in with a team ERA of 4.73, Bethune-Cookman 5.46. Interestingly enough, Alabama State, the number 1 batting team in the SWAC, they come in batting .320. They also have one of the top base stealers in the nation He is number 2 in the nation, if I'm not mistaken. So it should be a fascinating weekend. Taking a look at Alabama State and Bethune-Cookman. I'm looking forward to this series to see who kind of takes a stranglehold in the SWAC East.
Yeah, let's go into the, if you would, the Western division of some of these teams. You have Alcorn State at Prairie View. This is another game where Prairie View was able to sweep 3 from Alcorn earlier. If they want to kind of get fat on the cat, if you would, in terms of the nipping food, Prairie View needs to find a way to bring out the brooms. It's always tough. It's not like the Braves have not continued to play hard. They did get a game from Southern to give example, as well as Grambling, to let you know that they're not just going to be an easy out, even though, oddly enough, they lost 2 out of 3 to Pine Bluff. Prairie View has to find a way to get it done there at home. They hadn't been at home in a while. Can they make it work in terms of what that looks like to give them a little cushion as they go down the stretch to try to make a run in the position for the Western Division? With that being said, you have Arkansas, Pine Bluff at Texas Southern in Houston. This is another one where Texas Southern wants to find a way to bring out the brooms and get the sweep against the Pine Bluff team that's struggling of late. You can't give them confidence. You got to find a way to kind of knock them out early. And then the one that all we want to watch is just the rivalry game. Obviously, Southern seems to be struggling late, but they find a way. If you let them and keep them in the game, they find a way to dig deep late in the game and get some crucial wins that you probably would think they shouldn't find a way to get. Grambling is wanting to find a way to put the nail in the coffin. They took 2 out of 3 at home on the first series, so they get a chance to go back. Can they put a dominating series together against the Jaguars to make a statement that they're going to push for the top spot? Fascinating in this matchup. But with that said, where are you with the teams playing in the West?
Big weekend for Grambling in terms of making a statement because let's be honest, over the past few years, it has been Southern, Texas Southern, and now Prairie View has gotten themselves back in the mix in terms of being one of those top teams in the SWAC West. Big weekend for Grambling to really make a statement in terms of taking 2 of 3 or taking the weekend series, if you will, from Southern to solidify their position in terms of being one of the better teams in the SWAC West. So looking forward to watching that series and seeing how it plays out.
Good stuff. Great points. That'll bring it close for us today in terms of these matchups here. With that being said, thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends or colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. As Mike is out on assignment, we'll see if we can get him back into the lab in the studio on Thursday as we give you your latest and greatest updates for HBCU Sports. So look forward as we discuss the latest in the news. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattaCavil. Again, that's DrKenyattaCavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. That's Facebook and YouTube. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Lecture. I'm going to go back to you, Charles. Let you finally get to do it.
Dismissed.